Ronald was a small-town man from Winslow, Arizona, and it was his lifelong dream to move to a big city. He had a master's degree, and he applied for the job of accountancy at many places in big cities, especially in New York. Ronald truly loved New York, and desperately wanted to move to New York City. After trying for years, Ronald's lifelong dream came true when he received a job letter from the Big Apple. He immediately booked a flight and a hotel room for the interview. And very conveniently, he got the job. His employers greeted him kindly. "Welcome to our company. When are you going to be moving to the big city?" Ronald answered, "Thank you, sir. I've already moved in, and I'm temporarily living in a cheap hotel and looking for an apartment." Within a few days of living in the city, one of Ronald's colleagues advised him, "Ronald, it's very difficult to find a good apartment in a good neighborhood. It would take a lot of time and cost you a good fortune." Therefore, Ronald decided to look for an apartment in a bad neighborhood for a temporary stay. Ronald managed to find an apartment complex in the city. The building was 10 stories high, and his apartment was on the 8th floor. It was in a bad area with a lot of crime. He was planning to move out soon, so he never bothered to get to know any of his neighbors. One Wednesday night, he came home from a hard day at work, and he was feeling very exhausted. He got into the elevator and pressed the button for his floor. When the doors opened, there was a man standing outside. The man was dressed in a long overcoat, and his hat was pulled down low over his eyes. Ronald very politely said, "Hello," trying to be nice, but the man didn't answer. As Ronald got out of the elevator, the man pushed past Ronald roughly and got into the elevator and started pressing the buttons. Ronald muttered to himself, "What a jerk, got to move out soon." Ronald unlocked his apartment door and went inside. He went straight to the bathroom. While he was washing his hands, he happened to glance in the mirror and noticed something strange. There was a dark brown red stain on the sleeve of his shirt. It looked like blood. Then he remembered the rude guy who had bumped into him in the elevator. It made him feel sick. He didn't know where the blood had come from, but he had his suspicions. He immediately went and checked if his front door was locked properly. Then he took a shower and threw the blood-stained shirt in the trash. He didn't sleep very well that night. Only one thought roamed in his mind. Got to move out of this apartment and this neighborhood. The next morning, he left the apartment as soon as he could, and did not plan to get back for 2 days and 1 night. He was hanging out with his newly made friends and looking for a new place. Finally, Ronald came back to his apartment on Friday afternoon, as he had a date that evening with an attractive young woman, Rachel. Ronald had recently met Rachel. He had to get ready. He was hoping he would spend the night with Rachel at her apartment, as the next day was Saturday. On Friday afternoon, as he was getting ready to leave, he heard his doorbell ring. Ronald muttered in irritation. Who could that be? He was already late for his date, and he didn't want to waste any more time. Peering through the peephole, he saw a policeman standing outside. Ronald immediately became nervous. He composed his nervousness and loudly asked, "What is it?" to the door. The policeman very politely said, "I'm sorry to disturb you, sir. I want to ask you some questions. There was a murder 2 nights ago in the apartment next door to yours. You're probably the only person who can help." Ronald got even more nervous, but he managed to compose himself again and said, "I'm late for my date. I don't want to get involved. I'm sorry, officer. I didn't see anything." But Ronald was lying. The policeman said, "But you may be able to help us. Did you know your next-door neighbor? Did you see anybody suspicious? Can you at least open the door to talk?" Ronald finally opened the door and responded, "I'm new in this building. I don't know any of my neighbors. I wasn't home last night." The last statement of Ronald was a lie. He was in fact home that night in his apartment. Ronald refused to communicate any longer and said, "Sorry, officer, I can't help you." With despair, the policeman said, "All right, sir. Thank you for your time." Ronald walked off down the hallway and continued getting ready for his date. He had just dodged a very complicated situation which could have gone very wrong for him and for his future. He moved into this big city to fulfill his dreams and to make a good career. He didn't want any trouble, especially with the law. Who knows, the policeman could have suspected him as the murderer and got him into more trouble. Ronald couldn't help but give himself some credit on how he got away with the policeman so easily. Things could have gotten worse. Ronald went on the date with confidence, and things went great for him. Rachel was a beautiful, independent woman, and she was very understanding. He could simply drown in her eyes and forget all his worries. Rachel did suspect that Ronald was a little disturbed, and asked him about it. "Ron, we have known each other long enough to share our worries. Tell me what's bothering you." Ronald responded, "It's nothing major, just my apartment. Got to move out of that neighborhood." "In that case, you have nothing to worry, at least for the next 2 days, because you're going to spend the weekends with me, and you don't have a choice." Rachel knew how to make a person forget all their worries. She was amazing, very interesting, and very entertaining. Ronald almost forgot about everything and had a great time with Rachel. They spent Saturday and Sunday together, and then it came the time for Ronald to leave and get back to his apartment. The next day was Monday. It was a work day, and if he had stayed, Rachel might have gotten spooked by his desperation for staying. All of a sudden, he felt very nervous. His next-door neighbor had been murdered. The neighborhood was really unsafe. The only solace he felt in his heart was that one of his colleagues informed him last Sunday morning that he got an apartment for him, but it won't be vacant until next week. Ronald thought he would finally be able to move out soon. Pondering on all these, he also felt very guilty about lying to the policeman. After all, he had seen the murderer. Even though he hadn't seen his face properly, perhaps there was something he could have told the police that would help them catch the killer. Sometimes crimes are solved by one simple detail. Monday morning, before he went to work, he was wondering if the police had managed to solve the case. He turned on the TV and watched the local news, but they didn't mention anything about the murder. He also searched the net for the news, but couldn't find any information. When he was about to leave for work, he noticed a very bad odor in the hallway. It seemed to be coming from the apartment next door to his. He had a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. He went to the office of the building supervisor on the first floor and complained about the smell. Ronald said to the building supervisor, "A very bad smell is coming from the last apartment of the hallway on the 8th floor. Something has to be done about it because my apartment is next to that apartment." The building supervisor was surprised and said, "Nothing of this sort has happened before. Perhaps someone is cooking something crazy in their kitchen and you got spooked by the unfamiliar smell." When Ronald saw the building supervisor was not taking Ronald seriously, he mentioned the murder, and the building supervisor responded, "There hadn't been any murder in this building." Ronald got a feeling that the building supervisor was thinking he was delusional or crazy, but finally he managed to convince the supervisor to come back to his floor and see if he smelt anything. It wouldn't take more than 2 minutes. When the building supervisor got to Ronald's hallway, he himself got baffled, and he felt as if his stomach would almost implode because of the bad smell. Almost vomiting, the building supervisor said, The smell is a combination of rotten eggs and rotten fish. The building supervisor immediately got down to his floor and got his bundle of keys. The building supervisor had the keys of every apartment for every floor. This bundle was for the 8th floor. It took a little time, but finally he found the correct key and managed to open the door of Ronald's neighbor's apartment with the master key. Both of them got horrified by what they found. A policeman was on the floor, unrecognizable. The condition of the body was horrible. The smell was extremely overpowering. The policeman had been lying there for days. The building supervisor said, "I know this man. He was probably an undercop, watching over the neighborhood. Never knew he was a cop. Have never seen him in his uniform." All of a sudden, Ronald saw something that blew his mind. A picture on the wall. Ronald pointed his finger at the picture and asked the building supervisor, "Is this the man?" The building supervisor responded, "Yes, this is the man. I knew him very well. One of the nicest guys I've met." Ronald suddenly remembered what the policeman told him. "You are probably the only person who can help." Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.